Hi everyone, welcome to July's image critique. I've got 10 images here loaded, ready to go, and I thought I might wait for a second or so to see who joins us. If you are joining for the critique, I know it is always tough, depending on where you are in the world, to either stay up or get up early for it, but be assured that the recording of this will stay here in the group like all previous image critiques. So I've been doing this for quite some time, and if you're new to the group, make sure you use the search bar on your phone. It'll be the little magnifying glass, and on your computer, obviously off to the side there. Or if you're using the new version of Facebook, don't ask me because I haven't quite switched over just yet. Last week, Facebook did do a little update, and all of a sudden I had this brand new layout of the new Facebook, and I can tell you I spent, I think, about 48 hours in pure frustration trying to find everything. So make sure you use the little search tool in the group. The group is filled with amazing resources. We've been doing lots of videos over the last couple of years, lots of lives, lots of Q&As, lots of critiques. We've been sharing lots of other content as well, and it is all here. Just go to the videos tab or go to the search bar, and whatever it is that you're looking for, type it in. You'll be sure to find whatever it is that you're looking for information on. Now, I am going to look off to the side of the camera here because I can see just behind and off to the left, my left, your questions and things like that. We've got someone saying, where do we send the photos to be critiqued? So if you are a part of our newsletter from newbornposing.com, you can sign up, you can subscribe if you're a customer, or if you have, are not getting our emails, make sure you check your spam folders, because when we send out our information emails each week, at the bottom of that email, it's got the dates for the upcoming image critiques. So you'll find those on the recent emails. Mondays, we email out and we talk a little bit about products. Wednesdays, we always send an email with a new blog post attached. If you haven't seen or been to my blog on newbornposing.com, go there. You can actually break down my blog into lots of different sections. If you just click on the blog news section, it'll say newborn studio, it'll say Photoshop, it'll say editing, it'll say, business tools. And you can find blog posts on all of those different topics filled with lots of very, very valuable free content. It's all there to help you with your business. Every day I come into the group and I see the same questions being asked over and over and over again. And if you're wondering why you don't get a response, it's because it's probably been asked before. So make sure you use the group as a resource, not just a place to come in and share photos and do all that. We want this community to be a place where you can come and find the information that you're looking for. So, don't get upset if you don't always get an answer or a response. Do the work, use the search bar, go to the videos section, go to the announcements tab, go to the files section. You will find so much information. And then if all else fails, go to my blog. I can tell you that there's a blog post in there on absolutely every topic you could possibly imagine. I'm also, while we're waiting for a few more people to join us, go to my YouTube channel, subscribe to that, because I've got hundreds of videos on YouTube that are free content, everything that you could possibly think of, and we're going to continue to add lots more free content over the next few months, well, hopefully towards the rest of the year. We'll see how we go. But every week we're adding new stuff, and I love being able to share that with you guys. We've got a few people from Canada, someone from Denmark. Good morning, well, good evening to you guys. It's morning here, and it's probably nice and sunny in your part of the world, but it's a bit chilly here this morning in Brisbane, so I've got my nice warm wrap to keep me snug while I'm sitting here in the studio.
We've got 70 people watching.
Holy dooly,
so
let's get
I
started.
We can kick off.
Rightio, so like I said, I've got 10 images. Someone did ask, how do you submit an image? Once a month we do an image critique, and on a Friday, and the dates are all listed in those emails, and the day before I will post a link where people can subscribe. Upload, submit. That's the word I'm going for today. Now the thing last night was there was a little bit of an issue with the upload process, because we found out that yesterday there was over 700 people on the image critique submission waiting to upload their photos, and I think the website just got a little bit confused at one point because we received like 4 images through in 1 minute, and then nothing happened for about 4 minutes, and then there were 115 people at the same time last night trying to submit, and then the last 6 images came through in another like 30 seconds. It was crazy. So if you didn't get your image submitted, I do apologize. There were many of you on there trying to get your images uploaded. So even if you haven't got an image here, I can assure you that this is going to be extremely valuable. I'm going to go through each of these 10 images, and you're going to see the image through my eyes, and I'm going to give a little bit of feedback using Photoshop and my little trusty Wacom pen here to talk a little bit about composition, lighting, posing, you know, color tone, all of those different things, and storytelling elements as well if there's some of those here too. So let's dive in.
First image is up.
All right. I love seeing people submit images that are of different genres and sharing, you know, what they've been doing, because I know that it's been tough over the last few months photographing what we normally photograph. So photographing, you know, other subjects and other genres is fantastic, and it's a really great way to push your skills. I'm really enjoying the kind of styling here and the way that the dog is sort of positioned there with the gentleman. There's one thing that's kind of jumping out to me at the moment, and that's the lower half of this image. So if we have a look down here in the sort of bottom section there, it's the feet coming forward towards the camera. Now there's going to be a little bit of sort of lens perspective going on here, but the way that the feet have been cropped just here at the bottom of the frame, it's drawing my eye right down to that bottom edge of the frame, and it's not keeping me up here where it needs to be in terms of focus and attention. So the fact that he's not wearing any socks down here, it's added a lighter element to the image. So that lighter element being in contrast to the black pants and the black shoes and the dark flooring, it's really drawing my eye down there. So possibly paying attention to that, and I know it's very stylish for men to not wear socks with their shoes and everything right now, but in terms of composition and, you know, different elements that grab your attention, it's really not working for this particular setup. So my kind of, where I'm looking at this image, it's more of a, let me just come down here, it's more here, the actual photo itself. I don't think you actually need the lower half of this image. You could do, you know, some really great things here with this particular subject. The other thing that I'm kind of looking at in terms of, you know, the connection between the dog and the man, they're both sort of like just staring at the camera. There doesn't seem to be a lot of expression in either of their faces. So try to play with your subject a little bit more to get some different expression. You know, it is a very serious kind of moody look if that's what you're going for, but I'm looking at it and I judge a lot of image competitions all over the world, and I'm always looking for that little bit of something extra, that little bit of connection, I suppose, and personality to shine through, because they're both just kind of staring. Dogs have so much personality, and just, you know, using different sounds and different things like that to kind of get their head to turn. A slight shift or tilt of the dog's head would really sort of start to give you a bit more interest, I suppose, in terms of personality. And the man's gentle sort of hand placed on the chest, it's lovely, it's got great connection. But the one thing that's kind of happening over here with this hand, because you've got one arm coming this way, which is great in terms of posing technique, but this arm here, as it's coming forward, when you have an arm come forward towards the camera like that, what happens is, because we're sort of working in two-dimensional sort of, you know, medium here, you start to lose the real sort of shape, I suppose, of the arm and the length of the arm. It's called foreshortening. So the way that you give shape and you don't sort of create that foreshortening here in the forearm here, you need to be able to bend and turn. So if I was you know, posing this particular subject, I would have just had this arm come in this direction a little bit more. And then what that could have done is sort of drawn you from the eye, down the arm, and then the hand leads you back in, brings you back up to this hand and then around to that dog's face. So then you start to get this kind of like spiral effect with the way that you pose, and you use the different elements in arms and things like that to lead the viewer's eye around the frame. The other thing is just paying, a little bit more attention to jewelry. Watch doesn't need to be there. Take it off. Can't see all of it, so you don't need to see it, and it's not obviously a commercial for a watch. So I would definitely get rid of that. But yeah, just try to move them in the chair to get them a little bit more comfortable. A slightly higher perspective as well, and a longer focal length will definitely reduce the way that the legs are coming towards the camera there in terms of perspective, and it would really benefit this. A few other little things just to kind of look out for here is just where the floor meets the background down here. See how it's just that little bit lighter where those two tones are meeting. So paying particular attention to your photoshopping when you are coming in and you're darkening backgrounds where they meet and things like that. You've got to zoom in, you've got to look at it. And that's the thing. When you're working on sort of more fine arty styled images like this, and if you're thinking of submitting images like this to Rise Awards or whatever it is, you've got to get up, walk away, come back with fresh eyes, zoom out, zoom in, and what grabs your attention, all the different elements. So I like to look at balance. There's a few other little things kind of down here as well, just in the flooring. So come down, pay particular attention to that. You've got some highlighted areas on the chair. You can, darken those bits down. But you also do need to be extremely careful when you are working with these darker tones, not to completely underexpose all of that information. So if we have a look here, let's go into a copy layer and we'll take it into curves so we can see all this information here. Hang on. Now down here where you got your little black slider, if we have, see if it does it for me. All right, so I've got my finger here on the option key, and this is just going to tell me where we're sort of losing detail. So there are some areas in the suit and the pant where there's no real information there in those blacks. If you were going to print this, it'd print black blobs in those areas. So always pay attention to those darker tones in those shadows, because if I was looking at an image like this and, I'm going to want to see detail everywhere. I'm going to want to see separation between the arm and the chest area of the jacket, and where the different elements meet. Placement of the light is lovely. I love the catch lights in the eye. There's so much potential here, and I think it can be really refined with just a few sort of small tweaks here and there. Another thing, when you're photographing someone on a backdrop like that, just give them a little bit of separation. Move that chair forward just a bit so there's a little distance between them. So if you can see me here behind, I've got a backdrop here behind me. So it looks like he is sort of about that far away from the backdrop. You can see I'm quite close to it. So I would probably look to position them anywhere to 0.5 metre to 1 metre away from that backdrop, just to give them a bit more depth and space, so that way it'll minimize your lines down here.
I didn't get that.
Oh,
Could
thanks.
you try again?
Thanks, Suri.
She's always interrupting.
She's just always going to offer her 2 cents, isn't she? Yeah, and that'll sort of help reduce, obviously, the way that the background and the flooring are meeting there too, so you don't have those heavy, sharp lines there. But I think you've done a great job. Just a few, and you've got, like I said, lots of potential there and a few little things to kind of improve on. But that dog is the sweetest, and you all know I'm a sucker for a puppy. Alrighty, moving on. Okay, I love this little smile, and I mean, who doesn't love a baby that's smiling? Do you know, the wrapping here has been done really well. The styling of that wrap, the way it's been twisted around, the baby looks very comfortable. There's just a couple of things that are really jumping out right now in terms of when I open an image up, I always look for what catches my eye first. So when you download your photos from a shoot, when you go to edit that photo, sit back for a moment and sort of, open the photo and then go, right, what's catching my eye first? It is hard to train yourself to kind of think that way, but when we're producing photos for our clients, we have to remember that they just want their baby photographed. So their baby needs to be the main subject. So right now, the first thing I'm kind of looking at is this really dark, heavy line in the background that's cutting straight through the top of the baby's head. It doesn't need to be there. It's not consistent throughout the frame, like this is not dark or heavy, neither's this. So always remember that if you're working with a lighter kind of, a palette here in terms of you've got your light greens and your creams and then the flooring is quite light, always remember that those really darker elements that are in there are going to be very eye-catching. So reduce those. There's a few really quick ways on how you can do that. Using the patch tool, you can come in, select that line, and we'll just fade that. And you can reduce the opacity of that so that it's not as heavy. And I mean, if you look at that now, we'll take a little snapshot we've got before and after, and it's just going to help reduce a lot of those distracting elements in the background so that your eye goes to that baby's face where it's supposed to be. Alrighty. The other thing here is just the intensity here of light. Whilst the direction of the light, looks to be okay, there are some quite sort of bright highlights going on over here and then some sort of darker shadowy areas over here. So perhaps just softening that light a little bit, possibly sort of pulling it further away if it's an artificial light, or maybe even feathering it just a bit more. It's very hard to sort of tell here without knowing what type of light source you're using. But even, sort of filtering that light a bit more as well. If it is natural light, you can use sheer curtains and different things like that to help sort of diffuse that light a bit more, to make it a bit softer so that those shadows aren't so contrasty. Because you've got some really bright highlights here, on the face. And what happens is when that light's quite intense and it comes in, and it tends to kind of remove a lot of the shadows that add depth and dimension to the features of someone's face. So at the moment, we've got, we're sort of really struggling to kind of see, the lines here where we've got some really sort of dark shadows here. So always remember to kind of soften that light just a little bit more by feathering it or diffusing it, whatever your light source, and directing it, and then you'll be able to capture some really beautiful shadows there. Because down here we've got some really dark shadows as well going on. I don't mind the composition, but I do feel that it probably could have been cropped slightly different, because you've got your sort of baby coming out here into the side, and then we've got a lot of information over here to the right hand side that's not adding anything. There's nothing there that's storytelling. Obviously we've got that dark heavy line that needs to be reduced, but if you're going to crop through a baby, crop through a baby. Like if you're gonna, you either gonna get a full pullback or you're gonna come in and you're gonna get a close up. So if you were sort of to look at this from a different sort of crop angle, come right in and get that baby's face and fill the frame with the baby. Get rid of everything else that's in there that's distracting and make it about that baby's face. It doesn't have to have all of that background around it. I can see that a couple of little rings have been placed in here, and I'm guessing, wedding rings, things like that for the couple. Now they've just been placed in there. I know a lot of people like to use rings like that. Some people use the feet to put the rings over the toes and the hands and things like that. So sort of take the photo with and then take the photo without, because I know that they obviously belong to that person and they're going to add connection for the couple, but sort of always sort of offer a different option and try to use them in a way that adds a creative kind of perspective to the image by incorporating them on the toes or the fingers, because then that shows just how small they really are in terms of the parent's hand size to theirs too. But yeah, I do love that color palette. Alrighty. Okay. I love that this is so different, and it's not something that we see a lot. So there's so much, you know, time and attention to detail has gone into this. There's kind of a few little things here that I'm going to talk a little bit about, because to start with, when you're putting together different elements like this, you know, to frame your subject, to add to the composition, there's a few things to consider. Number one, when we're creating, you know, like a beautiful sort of floral, something's going on with my Wacom pen there, beautiful floral sort of things like this into the frame, there's quite a few different colours that have been used here. We've got some sort of darker reds, and then we've got some purpley pinks, and then we've got green, and then we've got cream. So when we're adding those colour tones, they really do need to balance each other out, but they also need to be obviously then incorporated into our subject. So I can see down here that the baby's got something on the outfit in terms of the whites or the creams, but it's very hard to see what it is. So I'm trying to look at it and go, we've got these white cream roses, but then they're not the same as what's on the outfit. So there's a disconnect there. But also consistently, when I'm looking for balance, especially when you are, you know, placing it very centered in the frame there around the subject, the placement of those white flowers really does need to be consistent, because at the moment you've got them on both sides, but the placement of them is not matching. It's not quite the same. So for me, they just keep drawing my eye away from here. I want to look here. So if you can come back and you know what I want? I want you to redo this image, not retake the photograph. I think what you've got here is something that you could really work with. There has been some type of filter put on this that's given it that painterly effect. I personally don't think that you need this in this photograph. I think that it's fun to play and experiment with different things like that to see how it can kind of add to the photograph, but I think that you've got such a great base here to really create something extraordinary. I would love to see you use like my Bland to Brilliant 50% grey layer and bring out all of the detail in each of these flowers. You can use my colour change action to darken down and add some pink tones into these white flowers so that you've got a more consistent frame around your subject and you don't have anything that's kind of going to grab your attention and pull you away from your subject. And I really do think that the over softening of the skin is just probably really taking away here. Obviously in capture we could have perfected the light a little bit more and controlled that better, but I think you could still play with it here. You could darken down some of the areas on the baby here that are a bit bright and bring in a little bit of light to Mum. Her eyebrow here is quite bright compared to the rest of her, so just controlling those highlights and shadows throughout both of them to bring out their features. So when you think about when you edit a more sort of fine art styled setup like this, what you want to do is think about how a light would fall across the subject. What part of the face is it going to hit first? So you want to bring those highlights out. And then the darker areas, you want to really reduce those areas to kind of give it a bit more of a 3D kind of look and add to it. But you want to use light to draw your eye into your subject. So I think you've got something here that you could really play with, but I would love for you to go back to the drawing board and really experiment with this, because you could have so much fun. You know, when you're working with a subject like this, obviously they're going to be very unpredictable. I would have loved to have seen more connection between the two of them, because that baby's eyes are open. So, and it's looking sort of somewhat an up way. I would have loved Mum to have been looking down at her baby to get that connection between the two of them, because at the moment she's kind of just laying there and she does have somewhat of a serene expression on her face. And she's holding on to that baby, but it just seems to be a little lack of a connection there between the two of them, I suppose. When we look at the fingers down here, when we're placing fingers, I can see 3 fingers very clearly here. And I know that there's another one in there, but get the shot, come in, and then change the hands. Because at the moment, we're kind of losing the fingers here, and then we've got fingers out there. And where the light's hitting those hands, it's really drawing your eye down. So controlling that a little better, get your shot, come in, and just adjust those hands. I would have also loved to have seen either another leg here from the baby to kind of balance that out, because at the moment we can only see one, and then we're sort of missing those toes. There is a photograph that I have taken. I would love for you to look at it. It's going to be on my page, my Little Pieces page. And it's a photo of a mum holding her little boy. She's not breastfeeding him, but it's got a beautiful frame around it. It's very Renaissance-y painting sort of theme style. But if you have a look at the placement of hands and have a look at how you can see all of the elements throughout the entire image and the connection between the two of them, even though the little boy is looking at the camera, I think that you would get some really great inspiration from that as well. But this is such a great start, and I would love to see you really explore this sort of style of shoot. But yeah, go back and re-edit this and see what else you can create from it, because I don't think you need all of that over softening and filters. I think you could really bring out the detail in this and create something beautiful. All right, how are we going?
We're going very well. We've got 63 people watching us. People from all over the world once again.
Fantastic.
Hi
Hi everyone. I love that you guys join in.
Georgia.
Okay, look at this. Look at all these little bits and pieces that have been added to this. I do love these kind of cute setups with babies in beds and the miniature furniture. It's very adorable. Okay, when we're posing a baby, you know, obviously the baby is always going to be our main focus, but I want you to consider next time when you're placing furniture, dolls furniture like this within a scene, all of the different elements, because there's quite a lot going on here. The baby obviously is the main subject. It's all about the baby, but unfortunately there's so much else going on here within the frame that the baby's, you know, it's kind of being overpowered by a lot of these distracting elements. If you have a look at the foreground down here, how dark it is compared to this area here. So the floor here, the skirting board and the floor over here, you can see where the shadows are. They are a lot brighter than the foreground. So I think here what we need to have a look at is that placement of the light. I can see that the light's sort of coming across from, you know, sort of this direction. What we need to do here, let's come over here to my little setup and I'll see if I can explain this visually a little bit better for you.
There we go.
So let's just say that this is our doll's bed here. Okay, let's bring this back here. We've got our wall back here. So let's imagine that this here is our wall. Now at the moment, all right, we've got that light coming in and it is falling in this direction, sort of, it's being sort of somewhat feathered and it's coming back and it's hitting the back of the wall over here. So what we need to do is change the placement of that light and have it more forward on that 45-degree angle. So we've got the baby's head here, we've got the 45-degree angle. That light needs to fall down across the front, so it's not hitting the background. I do this in all of my lighting tutorials. When we're positioning that light, we're looking at how we can control it to bring the light forward so that we're not lighting behind the baby. We want to light the baby across the front of the baby so that its face is the brightest part of this image and it's where we want the viewer to look, not at that background. So always remember, not feathered this way, feathered that way, so that you get that beautiful spill of light coming off the softbox and falling across the front of the baby, if that makes sense. I love my little decor. And I suppose if we do it from this angle, so instead of the light coming down and falling towards the background and spilling all over the area, you want to bring that light forward and spill it this way, turn it back towards you so you get that beautiful spill and fall off of light coming across the front of the baby, not onto the background. So remember, you can direct and control that light very easily by positioning and moving your softbox. Okay, so because that skirting board behind the baby is so bright, it is the brightest part and it just cuts straight in behind the background there. I think you could come back and redo this entire setup and have so much fun with it. The other thing is when we're positioning the baby towards the camera, when we're posing them, you can see that the back end of the bed is closest to your camera. And whilst I like how you've balanced it with the little bedside table, I would have brought this edge closer and brought this bit back and then still had the little side table just off to the side there. So always remember, baby's head closest to the camera, not the bottom, because we don't want to make the lower half of that baby appear, you know, any larger or what have you. We always want to bring that face forward, so that's what we see. It's all about that face. Colour setup, I love, you know, all the different little things. There's a couple of darker lines here compared to the rest of the floors. But just remember, when you're adding lots of different textures and patterns, it can start to overpower your baby. You've got polka dots, you've got checks, you've got stripes here, you've got stripes here, you've got another texture here. There's so much going on, and then obviously more lines and things going on. So just use that light to draw attention to the baby and start to kind of think about some, you know, softer textures that aren't so harsh that, you know, just adding too many elements to the image, and you'll really start to perfect this because you've done a great job. There's just a few little things there to kind of think about. In the background here in the wall, you can see that there's some darker areas just where it's not completely smooth. And I know that it's hard with some different types of materials, whatever it is that you're using, but a 50% grey layer, just lightening those darker areas would work really well at making that background look completely smooth.
Just while we're in between images there, Kelly, could you just say good morning to your mother? Oh. She's viewing.
Hi, Mum.
We're up to 80 people joining us. Make sure you let your peers know if you think that they should be watching this, tag them or whatever you need to do. Yeah,
it's a great little sort of lesson in lots of different things, that's for sure. All right, look at this beautiful setup. I love all these brown tones and the way that you've sort of wrapped the baby here and placed the bonnet and the tassel. I think you've done a really great job. There's just a couple of little things here for me when we do these types of setups. Obviously, there's lots of texture going on here. We've got texture in the background. We've got another sort of, make my brush a bit bigger, another sort of texture here, another texture here, another one there. We've got texture here, texture here. We've got something round down here, which I know is a plant, but I've got to really look at it. And then we've got, you know, some hard lines. So again, we've got a beautiful muted, sort of palette going on here with these browns, which I absolutely adore. But just always remember what's catching your attention. Let's get rid of all my little squiggles, because we've got a dark line up here which doesn't need to be here, and a dark line up here which does not need to be here. We've also got a circular prop in terms of the basket, and it comes down, and these lines on the side here, they're quite sort of bright compared to everything else that's going on in the lower half of this image. And where they hit the edge of that frame, they just pull your eye straight down. So you're either got to crop in or come back and get all of that all of that prop. Because down here where you've got the blanket underneath, it is a little bit lighter than it is up here. So again, drags your eye down in terms of your composition. So if you were going to have a look at another type of crop here, you know, make it about that baby. Bring it in, get rid of everything else that's going on there. Have a look at removing distracting elements. I'm trying to get rid of this handle over here. Okay, so you've got now a tight close-up of that baby, and it's all about that baby's face. If we were going to have a look at keeping the entire baby in and not cropping down there, I'd probably just come in a little bit here, and then I would darken down some of these areas. There's a few different ways to do it, just to sort of stop your eye from kind of coming out there. Let's come up a little bit more. And this is not a standard 2:3 ratio. It looks more like a 5:7 kind of crop. So always remember, when you are cropping your images for your clients, you've got your standard print sizes. When you give your client a crop, if you free crop your images in Lightroom or anything like that, and you give your photos to your clients to print, sometimes the print ratios will crop the images slightly differently as well. So if someone wanted to get a 6:4 print of this and they took it to the shop, it's obviously gonna, because that's the ratio I've got the crop tool at right now, it's going to change the actual image. It's going to remove parts of the image that you might not have wanted them to remove. Just something to keep in mind as well. So when we're looking at the different sizes of crops, keep everything really standard unless you are providing your own products for your clients that are in those print sizes. So for me, if I was going to look at keeping all of the baby in and I needed to do this and I wanted to kind of darken down a few areas, just using that gradient tool, selecting some of those sort of brown tones, and I've got it on multiply there, we can start to darken down some of those areas and then add a mask, paint it in, and you'll see how that starts to remove some of those brighter areas that you don't necessarily need there. Again, using the patch tool to remove or soften some of the lines in the background. But always remember that less is more when you're styling. You don't always have to add everything. If you're going to add greenery, make sure you can see it and place it somewhere else within the frame as well. The other thing here with the light that we're looking at is, at the moment, the brightest part of the image is right here. And I just feel that the direction of light has just fallen off and just off where it needs to be. Because this half of the baby's face is really quite sort of dark. And when we're looking at creating beautiful skin tones, we've got to make sure that that light is being used to light the baby. And then you need to capture the way that you've lit that baby with the right exposure to get those skin tones where they need to be in the histogram. So when you start learning about placing all of the different tones within your frame in the right space of your histogram to get the best exposure, you're going to save yourself so much time in editing. There's a million actions and Lightroom presets that are out there, and I can tell you there's nothing more frustrating for me than seeing an advertisement for an action or a preset and how amazing the final image looked, but the before image is completely underexposed. Get that exposure right in camera, get the light placement right, and you won't even have to do much to your photographs later on in post-production. I can guarantee you're going to save so much time, and you won't end up with these darker kind of muddy skin tones where the colours just kind of fall off there. And obviously with the direction of that light, you know, your floor is quite bright up here, and when we're photographing creamy floors, when we get that exposure wrong, they can start to look a little grey and flat as well. But you know what, you're so close to getting this absolutely perfect. It's just a few little things to kind of tweak. Alrighty. Oh, bless. All right, so we've got a square crop. We don't often see a lot of square crops, but I do love seeing the way that you've kind of placed that circular frame within the square crop and got rid of, you know, bits and pieces off to the side there that you don't necessarily need. Now, when we talk about styling, I really like how you've kept everything in that green kind of palette there. It's very, you know, it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of native, I suppose. Yeah, I like that. And especially with boys. I love boys in green, and this beautiful bottle green here is such a lovely colour. There's a few things here that I'm going to kind of point out. When we use fake plants, always remember to kind of soften down those areas and pay particular attention to the plasticky kind of bits where the flowers are kind of joined on and stuff, because we don't want it to look plasticky. We want to give it a richness. So really sort of paying attention to the placement of those leaves and those flowers. It looks like you've got a beautiful bowl here underneath the baby. So what I'm going to suggest is, I can't quite see what the background is. Hang on, let me just change that back to a red brush. I can't quite see what this is. Maybe it's like a fabric, a material. There's a couple of different shifts in color tone. You've got some blue here and some sort of browny tones over here. So I'm not really sure exactly what it is that you've got underneath that baby. But you've got some white flowers, you've got a whitish cream coloured bowl here. What I would like to see in the future is more of a background like in the previous photo, those sort of brighter, whiter, woody floors, and something a bit lighter to go with the prop. So when I'm mixing my props, I try to put the colour of my prop on a similar coloured background. And then I use other sort of tones within that similar colour palette to kind of create that separation. So instead of going with a really dark background and then a white prop that you can't really see all of, I would have gone with a background that's similar in tone to the prop, that wood prop. And then you're going to have that connection with those white flowers. But what I would have liked to have seen then is to put those leaves and flowers down around underneath the bowl. So you can just sort of see them come out underneath. So they're not sitting on top here where you can see all the stems and the joins. And then placing that green fabric underneath just a little bit more carefully and following the shape of that round bowl. Now, when you place a baby inside a prop like this, if you don't have the right amount of supports underneath their head and underneath their feet, and you can see where there's, it's almost like you've captured this baby, you know, it either just before it's moved or just after it's moved. Because there's nothing there to keep the baby in position. And where you see the hand, it's got sort of a little bit of tension there in the wrist over here. It's telling me that hand is either just moved or is about to move. And then here as well with the bend of that wrist, there's nothing really supporting a hand underneath. And then you've got a foot that looks like it's about ready to go. So when you don't support a baby with a wrap or little pillows underneath them, they will move a lot. Babies need to be supported. So always remember, when you're putting a baby down inside a prop or on a posing bag, when they're inside the womb, they're completely supported. When a mother is about to give birth, her belly is full. A full-term pregnancy, that baby has got very limited space to move inside. So always consider when you're putting them down somewhere, they need that support around them like they had inside the womb, so that their arms and legs can be positioned to make them look comfortable and relaxed, okay? And you use their little arms and legs to create beautiful shape. When I'm using a circular prop like this, I like to pose them in a way so that the little body follows that circular shape around the prop too. It takes a little bit of practice. I think you're onto something here though, just a little bit of refining with placing things and having a look at those color palettes. Now, when we have a look, that's just color, that's just styling at the moment and composition and giving you a few ideas and posing. Now, when we start to look at lighting, it's really quite bright and contrasty here. So when we have a look at the amount of light coming in here and we have a look at the direction of that light, what's happened is the light's coming up and lighting this baby. It's lighting obviously the back of the hand where it's facing the light, and then we've got a shadow here from, you know, the little hand that's blocking here. We're lighting underneath the nose up here, and then we're starting to sort of create a little bit of ghoul's lighting here. But that light's so intense, it really does need to be softened and controlled. And you need to always position that light so that it comes down and falls across the baby. So when we talk about light, we always say, oh, the light should be on a 45-degree angle. You also have to be able to pose that baby towards that light so that it falls across the baby on a 45-degree angle from the top gently across the face. And then you're going to create some really flattering highlights and shadows that are going to really bring out those features. So lots of information in my lighting tutorials, which I share. I've also done lots of, you know, other things here in the group with free videos if you're looking for it. And go to my YouTube channel and have a look at what I've got there too. It's going to give you lots of information. But keep going, because I think that you, I can see that you really love the styling elements here and are starting to have some fun with that. All right. Oh, what a handsome young man. All right, the connection here with the camera, I love this intense stare. I've got a son that that looks like this at the camera when I'm photographing him, and I just absolutely love it. The styling is beautiful. It's very simple. It's all about him. There's just a little bit of softening that's kind of going on here with the the skin tones and the grey tones, and I can see where the stool has been darkened down and stuff. So when we're softening photographs like this, it's definitely an editing style that I'm seeing more and more of. But always remember, when you're adding any blur or any skin softening and things like that, when you start to let's zoom in and have a look here. When you start to come to the edge of the skin, and then you've got all these beautiful sort of warmy, creamy tones and things like that going on. When you start to apply filters like that to those skin tones, that color tone, and then it sort of starts to bleed into the different color tones in the background, you get this kind of muddy kind of look. And what happens is it brings in other color tones into the skin. So where the skin starts to go a little gray around the edges, always remember to pull back whatever it is that you are using in that technique, so that the tones from other elements in the image don't bleed into the skin tones and shift that color that it's supposed to be. And you can see there's a lot of texture going on here in the jumper. It's beautiful, but then where you've kind of softened that background, it's kind of bleeding into the edge there. So it's lost that consistency in terms of sharpness throughout the image. The other thing is, when we are over softening and burning down areas, like, you've got to be really careful, because you get haloing. So here, where the background's kind of meeting the stool, these darker areas have been sort of toned down. You've got some haloing going in and around the fingers here. And then it's a little bit lighter. You've got to make sure that when you are retouching, the background and different elements within it, you've got to come in and look at the consistency throughout the entire frame to make sure that you don't miss any elements. And then obviously burning down backgrounds and it bleeding into stools. So you've got that little darker area there. But yeah, when I look at images like this, and whenever I'm judging, I look at everything. I look at how sharp the foreground is, and then how soft the background is. And if it's not consistent with, how lenses and their different apertures capture depth of field, I can see that something's been applied there to give it that softness. So when you are applying it, you've just got to make sure that it's not creating any shifts in color space or color tone, and it's not interfering with that focal length and that depth of field. And there's just where it's kind of coming in and meeting over there, just kind of be a bit more careful as well. But in terms of posing, I think it's really simple. He is just gorgeous, that beautiful red hair. I love the light placement too. I think you've done a great job there, but definitely continue to kind of explore this and have a little bit of fun. I would have loved to have seen him a little bit more sort of on an angle towards the camera as well, not so square on in terms of the placement of his little feet and legs there. Like, he's dressed up, ready to kind of go somewhere, but he's barefoot. So when you're styling, I'm kind of questioning, why has he got no shoes on? Because he's got long pants on and a jumper, so that tells me, he's warm, but yet he's got no shoes on. So I'm not quite sure why he's barefoot, and because they're so much lighter than the rest of the bottom half of this frame as well, they keep grabbing my attention, and there's just a little bit of a colour shift there in the skin tones. So be careful with that too. But yeah, great capture with his little personality right there into the frame. I think that's excellent. Alrighty. The colour palette's really beautiful here. I love these kind of peachy gold warm tones with the soft sort of subtle creams. I think you've done a great job there. The one thing that's really kind of grabbing me here is just how bright the face is here, and then sort of how dark some of these shadows here are. I can see the position of your light, and I think it's in a really great position. in terms of the placement. I just think you probably could have feathered that light a bit more and softened it. It seems like if we have a look here at the actual light itself, I can see that it's kind of, a nice sort of square light, and it looks kind of fairly square on to your subject in terms of direction. And what I mean is, if you have a look here, and I'll come over. Whoop.
Let's go with this one. And
Can we see this one?
there we go.
All right, so here's my little softbox. Now, what I mean is it looks quite direct in terms of intensity. It's that the light is kind of coming and falling straight on. So this is where you've got to use your modifier to really kind of control how intense that light is that's going to fall across your subject. So this is where we can feather and soften that light. So just a little shift in position there. So keep the light exactly where it is in terms of height and where it's sitting at a 45-degree angle. Just adjust your modifier to kind of soften that light, because the full intensity is always going to come out of the center of your light. When you feather, you get a spill, a fall off of light that's going to come off the edge of your softbox. This light is going to be softer than this light. So when you have it pointing directly at your subject, it's going to be quite intense. When you feather it, you get this beautiful spill, this fill light, this feathered light coming off the edge, and it's going to spill across your subject. Now, if you find that when you do feather that light source, I'll come back over here, that obviously you might then need to turn up your light so you get a little bit more light. You may need to bring in a reflector to fill in some of those shadows. It's all about getting that capture, having a look at your shadows, having a look at the intensity of them. Do I need to soften it? Because I'm looking at this beautiful face, and she's got this soft look about her. She's got these beautiful soft flowers. She's got, her hair's wispy and it's soft. You want to make sure that you choose the right style of lighting to suit everything else that's going on here. So you want a nice soft light that's still going to add, some depth and dimension. Because what's happened is, with the full intensity of light, you've got these bright highlights coming down the nose. Now what happens is, when you get all of that bright light coming through, you can't really tell the difference here in terms of distance from the top of the nose to the cheek there, because the light's kind of removed a lot of the shape of the face in here. But yet we've got these really dark shadows coming on through here where the light's not hitting those areas of the face. So softening it is going to play a huge part in it. Another thing to look for is attention to detail. Get rid of the hairband. Doesn't need to be there. Take the shot. Look at the back of the camera. Right, what can I adjust? What can I fix? The neckline of the dress here, where it is brighter and it meets the bottom of the frame, tone it down, get rid of it. But softening your light will also contribute to that. And try not to crop through things like necklines. Crop slightly below it, so you've got that beautiful circular shape of the collar, and it's going to keep you within the frame. It's not going to go to the edge of that frame and take you out. The other thing is here, with these soft sort of muted tones up here, when you're using fake flowers, they just look like they've been sitting in the sun and they've faded with these green tones. So you can recolor those. My color change action would make those beautiful and rich and green, like they should be in a real flower. And come in and just tidy up the edges of the silk flowers around here. Using your spot healing brush or your patch tool would really help that. And you can just come in and tidy up all of these little areas. And again, with her skin as well, like I do love keeping the texture of skin. With a beautiful skin like this, I wouldn't put any skin softening on this if this was a fine art portrait for me. I would actually come in and I would just remove all of these little things and pay attention to little spots and blemishes and get rid of those. I wouldn't even worry about skin softening, because you want to keep all that beautiful texture of her skin. when we see skin that's been over softened, it doesn't need to be. You know, work on your retouching skills, keep going with this, and just pay attention to all of those little details, and go back and revisit this, because I think you've got lots of potential. Alrighty. Oh, this baby looks very, very comfortable here and sleepy. I love, it's kind of like one of those moments where you're stuck into their room to get a little shot of them sleeping. I think it's gorgeous. There's a few little things to kind of look at here. So at the moment, the positioning of the baby's hands under the chin just look like they're coming forward just a little bit too much. So where the baby is. And when you're wrapping them, I can see that the wrap is just a little loose here around the hands here. Hang on, let me change the color of that. A little loose here and here. So what happens is when we're wrapping them, if we don't, oh, it's because I'm on the wrong tool, Kelly. Duh.
I was just trying to work that out for you.
I'm looking at the photo, not at my tools. When we wrap them and we position their hands like that, just bringing that wrap a little bit tighter in, not too tight, obviously, will help keep those hands in underneath that chin. Because what's happened is when you've laid that baby down, it's kind of gone into this mode where that chin's come in. And being able to wrap them just that little bit tighter will bring those hands up. And then what you can do is when you get those hands up in here, because they've got the support of the wrap, they'll stay there, then you can bring that chin forward on top of the hands. And when you can bring that chin forward, you can then eliminate the strap of the bonnet that you can see they're kind of coming in around. When you're going for a close-up shot like this, you really do have to pay attention to all of the little things that are going on here, because you've got this beautiful face. That's what the parents are paying you to capture. But you've got so much else going on around the baby here. You've got lines of the wrap, you've got hands, you've got tassels here, you've got all this texture going on around the baby, that the baby's face is there. It's obviously, you know, it's what you're looking at, but there's just so much else that could be just refined a little bit more and tidied up to make it look a little neater. Because what happens is when you have space around the subject and you're using a lot of light tones here, creams and whites, when they're not tight and they're not pulled in and positioned properly, you create shadow. And at the moment, the light coming through, it's quite contrasty, so the shadows are a little bit more prominent. You've got some shadows coming in around the face, you've got shadows here, and the contrast in the fingers in terms of the highlights and shadows as well is really quite sort of busy. So when we pay particular attention to how we wrap and how we position the baby, and then how we use light to draw our eye towards the main focus of the image, which is always going to be the baby's face, you're then going to really start to finesse and refine your photographs and see some huge changes. If I was positioning the bonnet on this particular baby and I'm coming in and I know that I'm going to get a shot from this side, I would have my tassels here. That's not a really great tassel, but anyway, you know what I mean. Because down here it's kind of just creating a little bit of busyness further away from the camera, and it's not really an added feature. If you're using a bonnet, you want to frame the face and you want to use the tassels and the bows to add in terms of your composition. So when we look at the light here, I can see that the light is obviously coming in and it's hitting that side of the face, and it's creating some shadows and things like that, but it is really quite intense with the way that it's hit this area of the face, and it's just fallen off here and created obviously some darker shadowy areas there. Now I do love shadow, but they need to be nice and consistent throughout the image. The hands down here, we've got some bright sort of highlights coming in and hitting the back of the fingers here, but then up here the fingers are a little bit darker. So that's where you're going to get those darker red tones, and sometimes they are a little hard to kind of match to keep that skin tone consistent throughout all areas of the baby. So just controlling that light a little bit more, and we've got an area up here that is a little bit brighter than everywhere else. So when you place a baby down and inside something, what happens is if the light is not high enough and it's coming in more side-on ways, parts of the prop or the posing bag or whatever it is can create shadows. So always remember that how you position a baby in something or on something, always look for the different things that are gonna prevent the light from falling across where you want it to go. So at the moment, you're kind of lighting one side of the face there and parts of the hands. And when you're shooting high key, you really want that light to be nice and consistent throughout the entire frame, so you get all those creamy tones exactly the way that you intend to capture them. I do love close-ups, and you know, you've done really well at keeping the, cropping it so you're not cropping through the fingers and cropping through the hat. Just a couple of little things there and you'll see some huge changes. Oh, another smiling baby.
That's our last image.
Oh, wow. Look at these smiles. When you use browns and blues together and then you sort of use these little flowers down here to kind of add to it, I do enjoy that contrast in light to dark and those colour tones. I do really enjoy that, and that little sort of shade of green there in there. It's quite lovely. The one thing that I'm kind of looking at is that there is a lot of blue going on around the baby. So I probably would have, if I'd been, obviously this is not my photograph, but if I'd been styling this, I probably would have tucked in this a little bit more, just so it wasn't covering the prop so much, because we can see parts of the prop, but not all of it. So it looks like it's got some really great sort of woven textures there, but not covering up that prop so much would have given, and tucked in that blue a little bit more, would sort of not have all of this blue information. If I circle it, now compared to the baby, that's a lot of blue. So the baby's skin tones are sort of quite similar in tone to the background and the basket, which is lovely. I love that. But the blue, there's so much more blue, and it's very subtle down here in the flowers that it's quite bright and it's overpowering the baby. These areas up here are much brighter than the baby's face. But if they'd been tucked into that prop, so the baby was kind of sitting up on it and it was closer to the camera than the fabric, because at the moment with the amount of fabric that's here, this is closer to your camera. It's also closer to your light source, so it's going to be brighter than the baby. And that's where tucking it in and bringing it under the baby and bringing the baby up on top of it is going to make the baby stand out so much more instead of that blue wrap. But I do love how you've put those two colour tones together. And the positioning and posing of the baby is lovely. It's just that there's so much blue material there that it's kind of fighting for the attention of that baby. When we do look at the direction of light here, and you've captured that smile absolutely beautifully, the light is coming in here. So we're going to have a bright arm and we're going to have a bright face, and we can see the shadows. But as it's coming down, that light, the cheek and everything, because the light's kind of coming in more this way, we're getting some darker shadowy areas around the lip area. So grab the shot. Obviously you've captured that smile, and sometimes we don't always get everything perfect when they smile. You can lighten these areas, but at the moment it just looks a little dark around that top lip area. So bringing that chin up a bit more, or bringing that light around so that it falls across the face, not comes in from the side. I often see a lot of setups and I think, why are you lighting the side of the baby? Light that baby's face. Bring that light a little bit more forward and position that baby towards that light. And you're going to start to have more even, consistent lighting across your subject. But other than that, I think you've done a really great job. So yeah, we are done through our 10 images. Thanks everyone. These are my opinions. I've been doing this for 17 years. I have been learning non-stop through education in terms of technical excellence. When we pick up a camera and we take a photograph for someone that's paying us for a product and service, we have to be the best photographers that we can be for that client that day. So it's remembering all of the little elements that go and contribute towards a finished print. And for me, you know, when I pick up my camera, I'm obviously taking the baby's safety and comfort. You know, I'm taking that, you know, as a priority. And then when I pick up the camera, I'm looking at the foreground, the middle ground, the background. When I'm styling, I'm using elements that contribute to the composition, the storytelling, the style, the color tones and palettes that my clients have selected. And I look at the photograph and I go, do you know what? I don't need that. I take it away. So when we start to introduce elements into photographs, we have to consider, is it contributing to the photo or is it distracting? Is it enhancing the subject? Is it benefiting the composition in terms of drawing your eye further in towards the baby? And all of those things are things that I constantly consider. How am I using light to create variation, to create mood, to add shape, to add depth and dimension to my photographs? How am I capturing that in camera to get the best exposure for my clients so that my prints are like no one else's? When I push myself in the studio, when I'm taking a photograph for my client, I'm not considering anyone else but my client and being the best photographer that I can be that day for them. And that's something that I want you to consider as well. Picking up a camera is easy. Pushing the button is easy. Knowing how to tell your camera, your tool, how to capture the information that's in front of it is your job as a photographer. And it's perfecting those skills, because when you've got a baby that's continually moving, when you've got a fussy baby, when you've got so much going on in the studio, when you're photographing an unpredictable subject, all of those camera skills, those lighting skills, those styling skills, they need to just be able to come to you like second nature. You need to know them so that you can capture those photographs. And you are only ever as good as your last photograph. But you want to create something and an experience for your clients that they're going to tell the world about. That's what it's about. That's what staying in business is all about. And right now, we are in extremely uncertain times. We've got some countries that still aren't photographing, some countries that are because of the current restrictions. So wherever you're at right now, when you're in your studio, always make sure that you are pushing yourself to be the best that you can be right then. And it's about time, it's about having persistence, it's about learning, it's being open to new information and techniques, and pushing yourself every single time you walk into your studio and pick up that camera. Photography is a gift, it really is. And I wake up every day just grateful for all of the things that it's given me and the experiences that I've had. So I want you to feel the same way every time you pick up your camera, and love it every time. And you will, have such an extraordinary experience with photography. I know you will. But anyway, I'm reading some of the comments here. Thanks, guys. And thank you to everyone that submitted a photo. I'm sorry if you didn't get your image up, but it is truly valuable to listen to, a lot of the different things that I'm obviously talking about, but to see a photograph through someone else's eyes, because, we all see things differently, and that's great. You being unique, being you, is something that I always want to encourage you to do, and just keep learning, keep growing, and be extraordinary every single day. It is Friday here in Australia. Good night to all of those of you that have stayed up nice and late. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you again next week. We're going to do a live Q&A in the group, and get your questions ready for next week. I'll post some more information on Monday. But have a great weekend. Stay safe and take care. Bye.